Software architecture, design patterns and principles, and all-around IT put into one podcast.
The goal is simple, to give you even more from DevMentors.
My name is Peter.
My name is Darek.
And let's discuss the software as we know it.
So I guess that we are live, or actually on air, right? This is the right phrase in the radio. We are on air, right?
Yeah, I guess.
It's
the right one.
So welcome everyone to the first episode of our, I would say, new, fresh podcast called Software as We Know It. So the idea about this whole thing is that, we wanted to give you something in addition to what we do, let's say, on our daily basis. So open source code and also the stuff also on the YouTube as well. But, maybe you're sometimes in a traffic jam, maybe you're doing some other type of activities, running, doing some sort of sports, and you would like still to learn new stuff all around the architecture, software in general. So we thought that the podcast in this particular case would be appropriate choice. First episode is actually, I think that the whole formula is rather something that will be, I would say, not that very often happening in the future, because this is just two of us. But later we'll probably introduce some great guests that will cover some specific topics, of course, around the software architecture itself, right?
Yeah, so the first episode is like an introduction. We'll talk a bit about the mentors, about our experience, and then the next episodes we'll meet with some of the great guests and talk about different kinds of software engineering topics.
Yeah, so hopefully after this episode you'll simply know us slightly better, and you'll see maybe or find out something interesting or something that you would not expect. Probably some of this might appear. So each of us will have some certain questions. Actually, we don't know what the questions actually really are. So hopefully we'll not be surprised that much that we'll just hang up for a while. But I think that it's not gonna be like very super technical. It's rather something from the past that we've already experienced. So my first question to you is, and I know that this might sound like a cliche, but the reason I'm asking this question is because there are different, I would say, paths how you might become a software engineer. And of course, the stereotype is that in order to be a software engineer, probably your first, Christmas gift was like a keyboard, and you start programming from the, age of 3, because otherwise you're not gonna be successful in this industry. So my question, of course, is how did you come up for the idea to become a software engineer? And actually, was it something that happened intentionally, or it just happened by mistake?
Okay, so at first, let's say in the primary or secondary school, depending on what's your country, but let's say when I was like 12, 13, something like this, somewhere at the time I decided I wanted to do something with this applied IT sciences. But then when I was a bit older, about 16, 17 years old, I decided that it's boring to sit in front of the code for the whole day. And I decided to go to, let's say, different kind of university, the military university. But then it turned out I had some issues with the physical preparation for this, let's say, exam. And by accident, I landed on the university where I went back to my IT studies. So I went this typical path: high school, mathematics, physics. Always liked math. Always been good at math, but it turned out when I went to high school, I wasn't that good at math. But I was okay. And then I just went to the university and studied IT for 5 years. So kind of, let's say, classical path, but on the other hand, a little bit by an accident that it turned out that I am a software engineer now.
Yeah, but to me this is quite funny because of few reasons. In terms of similarities like similarities between two of us, because first I was also bored. Let's be honest. In a high school, I think that during the IT classes we had the programming in the Turbo Pascal. And I had the issue with writing a very simple like program with the if statement. I was really bad at this. So my only hope for passing those all exercises that we were like put through during these classes was to ask my colleagues to just do this or help me write these certain programs. And I really thought that the code itself is something really boring. I mean, the development in that case seemed like something that I would not even consider in the close future, and not even mentioning that I would consider this professionally. The second thing, which is slightly, I would say another similarity, is that I was also kind of related to the military school, because I was actually attending into how is it called in the English, military school, technical school or something. I'm not quite sure, but in general, I'm not a soldier or something. But there was just 2 ways of, I would say, attending. So you could just become the soldier Polish.
Yeah,
and
you could have a rank, or you could be like a civil. Civilian.
Yes, I graduated as a civil, of course. So this is the second similarity, and that's quite funny that you mentioned that you had the physical issues regarding your physics in general.
I had some issues with running with my knees or joints back then. After a year or two, it was just fine, but during the time I couldn't prepare, so I just landed in front of computer instead.
So you already have like I would say tip number 1. It's either you are running or you have like how much is your bicep? 45?
No, not that much. Maybe 41 too.
41 too. Okay, so you either have like over 200 kilos in squat, or you are a good runner. No, but of course it's a joke. But yeah, so this I would say the similarity number 2, and I must say that when I was studying already, I mean the math was killing me, to be honest, because that was like honestly when I decided to go to this is Military University of Technology. Now I remember the full name. I was already oriented in the path for, let's say, maybe I will try to become a software engineer, because I hated this in the high school. However, when I graduated, I had to make some sort of choice. So either start working or go to the studies. And my only hope in terms of software engineering was that I really liked games, which is like another obvious thing. So I really like playing games at that time, and I thought, okay, maybe I will just become a game designer or game or the programmer who will just make awesome games like in the CD Projekt. Maybe I will be involved in the Witcher game or something. And that was actually my only driver that finally put me into this path in terms of education. But the first semester, and you already have like 3 maths. I was like, what?
Yeah, I mean, for most of the time you don't use that math that much, but actually there is this part of math like algebra, graph theory, all this stuff, which is really helpful, especially if you are into game development. Without this advanced math or physics, you can't do much. But even if you're a regular developer, if you are good at graphs, algebra, all that stuff, you at least know some algorithms that can be very helpful when it comes to data structures and all these things. So it actually pays off. But on the other hand, for example, when I was doing master's degree, we had a quantum physics. So and it was the applied IT sciences. But yeah,
I mean, to me there was also some WTF subjects like 3 maths at the very beginning, when you really thought that, okay, so let's just teach me how to create a game, right? And you already start with physics, because I had on first semester I had the physics, like electronics, and 3 different types of mathematics. And I would say introduction to the programming, I guess that was in C, in then on the semester number 2 I had C++, and that was introduction to object-oriented programming. Then we had on third semester Java, and on the fourth I had the I think that I'm not quite sure how was this called, something like concurrent programming or parallel programming, and that was the C#, and that was the first time I was using the C#, and actually really liked it comparing to Java even back then. So like 2020, I think 2012. Sorry.
Okay. We also had C, C++, then mostly Java. There was a bit of C#, but eventually by accident I decided that C# looks better because I did some programming in XNA, this engine for game programming. It was made by the Microsoft back then. It's already dead, but like still write other technologies. But I like this, and this is why I chose C# over Java. I guess it was probably the main reason. But on studies, during the studies, we mostly had Java. However, after let's say a year or two, you were more like given a task, do some project by yourself or with your colleagues as a team, and it's up to you which language you want to use. So that was actually okay. So you could pick up pretty much any language that you wanted to.
Yeah. So that's good. That's good. Yeah, but honestly, that's quite funny because and it's good that we actually said this, because maybe some people may have this impression that we were like on this software engineering path from really early days, and actually it's not really happening. I mean, at least in my case, that was pure coincidence, and and actually computer games made it.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like a teenager, maybe I wrote some simple JavaScript code, or I read some book about C and algorithms, but it was this if you've ever read some old C or C++ book, it was this old obscure code with the variables named like ABC, and when you looked at this, I mean, it wasn't really like a, let's say, nice looking code. And I think that was also one of the main reasons when I read books like this, or when we had some additional, let's say, classes, or some kind of additional classes during high school, before the university, in our, let's say, high school, about the programming that you could join after hours. We would write this C code with this, weird looking variable names, and it wasn't, maybe it worked, but it was like, what is this? I mean, why does it look like crap? And I think it was also one of the reasons why, for me, like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life at this point.
I had a very similar, I think, objections. I mean, when I was doing this Turbo Pascal in the high school, and I would say even on the beginning in my, let's say, university career, I think that the way you teach is very important. And I was not very, all the stuff that we were doing in this Turbo Pascal or even in C was not very clear to me why I need to do this in order to make it work. And once actually, I remember that the first time I really thought that programming is cool, and that was the classes with the Java, and the classes itself sucked. I mean, there was the professor who was teaching us was not very practical. I mean, he had the theoretical knowledge, but in terms of coding, he was not very good. But the project that we had to do for the semester completion was to create a game in a Java. I think that was some Java applet or something. And I was doing a Chinese game, this board game when you have the pieces, you just need to roll the dice. And I was doing this with my colleague, actually my roommate in that time. And actually when we were sitting together, and I was actually seeing that this is not yet another crappy console application that is adding 2 digits, but actually this game starts, living its own life. I thought, wow, this actually is pretty cool. I was able to create a board game on my computer, and that's actually was not even that crappy. I mean, in terms of looking, I mean, the code was crap, and of course there was quite a lot of bad practices in there, but overall result was very satisfying. That was the first time actually. So the second year on the university when I felt that this might be a thing.
Oh, nice. Actually, on my side, during our Java or Linux classes, we had really good tutors. They were, let's say, young guys about maybe their 30s. They were doing their PhD, so they were just running the classes as part of their, let's say, job. And yeah, it was really good. There was really good classes back then. So I would say this was actually surprisingly very, very nice. But still back then, even though they would tell us about these interfaces and encapsulation, all that stuff, it just I couldn't really get it that much. I understood this after working for a few years actually already, when it all made sense for the first time.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it looked for me like there is an interface, there's an abstract class, and you have this animal and mammal, and then you have a dog or human and all this crap, which doesn't make sense because you don't really use the inherited that much. So again, sometimes the examples weren't really that smart.
Yes, but once again, this is, I think, because a lot of tutors are not really, I would say, active software engineers in the companies. They are actually, I mean, at least in maybe in this Poland specific or something, but it pretty much, it's a very, I would say, it's pretty hard to determine who would you have as a tutor, because as you mentioned, I also had some software engineers who were working for quite a big companies in Poland, and actually had few classes with them, and that was completely different story, because they were not creating this made up stupid animal examples, but rather something like, you know what, I had this issue, and because I was using that approach, it worked. Otherwise, this would not work. So you can immediately see, okay, this actually makes sense.
Especially like you said, having these tutors, which were, for example, either active software engineers or they would run their own companies. This also is a very good, let's say, memories, a very good experience working with such guys, because they would have a totally different kind of thinking. And if they were to give you, let's say, some kind of project during the semester, it would be all about, gather the team, create the app. These are the requirements. I don't care what language do you use. I want to you should fulfill these requirements. I want to see how it works. And you could go to them, ask them about how to implement this, that, and this was more like real work later on.
Yeah, exactly. All right, your question, I guess.
Okay, so since we talk about the studies, because everyone who studied, I mean, lots of people would say, I wouldn't probably go to the university again, or I would change this or change that. But there must be some things that, from your perspective, were actually very, smart, or maybe you didn't appreciate them back then. But after, let's say, a few years, once you started doing some, actual work or commercial projects, maybe you would think that, okay, when I was studying, they would tell me about this and that, and back then it didn't make much sense, but now I wish maybe I spend more time learning about this specific topic or this language or this design pattern. Is there something like this in your mind?
Let's break it to the two things. First, that you said that a lot of people actually think that it was not worth going to the university. So if you would ask me whether I do regret going to the university, I would say no. But it's not because I have a lot of useful knowledge on my daily basis today now as a software engineer. I mean, it's not like everything that was in there, I would say, made me a better developer now. I mean, there were quite a lot of stuff that was completely useless for me. But one thing that I really appreciated in terms of studies, actually two things. First was the connections with great people, I mean, it's really cool that sometimes now I can, like my colleagues back then, now I'm reading their articles sometimes. They are now working for, they're becoming actually great experts in different types, different areas around the IT. So I had, let's say, one pretty close friend, called Mariusz Litvin, so hopefully maybe you will listen to this. But I was listening to his podcast. He's now related to the security in Google, working in the Zurich in Switzerland, and I mean it's really cool that you can see and you have these connections with that great experts and a lot of people who have this great knowledge. So that was something that, I mean, after I graduated, I really started appreciating, because even in terms of some business related stuff, it's really useful. But also in terms of some different projects, you have someone who you just simply know that this will be a good candidate, let's say, for the company that you are now working for. But the skill actually, and something that I really appreciated, and that's completely not related to programming, to be honest, on the studies, I learned how to learn. And that's because of the amount of the work I had and amount of subjects. And that's something that really helped me become then a better developer and filter the information which is necessary in the current situation.
The noise.
Yeah, just filter the noise and just try to get the essence and use it for myself. And that's something that I think that the studies gave me, and it's completely not obvious, but I completely changed the way I'm learning now. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'll put this on the YouTube sometimes. How do I treat and categorize stuff into different I would say, depending on the purpose, etc. And this is something that I really appreciate. But from the code perspective, in terms of the university, etc., I mean, at the very beginning, and I think that you mentioned this as well, I was not really committed to object-oriented programming at the very beginning. And it's weird, because it's like, okay, I had this on the studies, right? Like, you're learning about this, like inheritance, polymorphism, encapsulation, etc. But actually, maybe that's because I was dumb. Maybe I was not attending to the classes. That was also, I would say, quite possible. But I didn't get the whole idea about why we are doing this. So for my first, I would say, 2 years, that was something that really was, I would say, the root of all my mistakes in the becoming, I would say, professional programmer. And I was doing a lot of those mistakes. Thankfully, I had great, I would say, leader of my team, who was helping me and who was correcting these mistakes. But I would say that the object-oriented programming was something that I at first glance, I say, okay, it's yet another stupid rule. But then when you start realizing why this idea about encapsulating not only the properties, but also the whole behavior acting between the objects, why we are doing this, especially, of course, in terms of, let's say, tactical domain-driven design. And a lot of people actually seeing this such of code, they say, wow, you're doing the DDD. No, you're doing object-oriented programming, right? And for many developers, even experienced, this is something that it's not very, I mean, they're surprised, right?
Yeah, I mean, the issue with OOP is that they would tell you OOP is about object, right? So it's about nouns.
Yeah.
Like, you have to look for the subject. Who is doing this specific action? The subject is the king, right? And then you start modeling your code based on all these nouns, right? You hear person, user, payment order, and this is how you model your stuff. While the OOP is all about the actions, the verbs, the behaviors. And I think they didn't tell us that back then.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like a mind game changer for me, but it took me a few years to understand this deeply.
Yes, exactly. So answering, yes, this is something that I would back then would pay way more attention to. But honestly, I need to be, I think, fair about this. There are also quite a lot of different topics that I've never used, and of course, it's like, if you want to be a great developer, I mean, the math would be good to just know certain things, and you might be surprised how unexpectedly some knowing some topics may help you. But also the reality is that now in today's world, I mean, a lot of stuff is already being packed in certain nuggets, frameworks, and some other SaaS platforms, and you don't need to do this by yourself. I mean, of course, you need to remember that we are both like oriented into more like distributed system architecture, etc. We're not doing games, so of course for the game development, like all this finding the the graphs, of course, everything related to graphs, maths, like
algebra, all this stuff.
yes, like vector calculation, finding the like algorithms, with finding the
Yeah.
shortest path, etc. Like a star or something. Yes, this is something that needs to be known in order to make your engine or whatever you're doing efficient. But if you're doing like web application, at the first step when you're doing the monoliths, probably there's not much magic. However, when you're doing the distributed system in general, yeah, some of those concepts actually related to math and the other stuff, it's actually in there, right? Like the consensus algorithms, etc., and why some paradox which were actually explained during the university, it's in there.
Yeah, or when you need to do some optimizations, performance related stuff, you
Yes.
have to be aware of data structures, big O notation. But still, you don't have to maybe remember how to implement the specific data structure, but you just need to be aware that something like this exists and when it's actually useful, right? In most cases.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, I wouldn't be able now to, let's say, just out of nowhere, like write you like heap sort. I mean, I would probably fail. I know in general, in theory, how this should work, but I think that I would fail. And it's not something that I'm really ashamed. I mean, I don't really feel the pain because of I can do this. And of course, it's yet another discussion, right? Where especially for the FANG companies, is it good? They are, I would say, slightly differently oriented in terms of requirements, etc. But yeah, actually, I have a question for you related to the FANG in this particular case. I mean, did you? I mean, have you ever had this like big dream of becoming an engineer for like Microsoft, Netflix, or some big company, or just like whatever?
Not really. I mean, I think mostly due to the fact that if you wanted to work at a big company like this, especially let's say 10 years ago, for example, if you live in Poland, okay, now there's some, I think, Google Office and there will be another one. But back then there was one, but then they, I think, moved to some other place. So you would probably have to relocate maybe to the States or to other country. So I wasn't really considering this. That's, let's say, one reason. And the other reason is that I always preferred to work in a smaller teams where I would have, let's say, bigger responsibility of the about the project. I would have like a bigger impact. And I know that's of course the same in these big companies because you have these teams, you have these divisions, and they work on different internal projects and so on. But I think I always prefer to work in a small company than a bigger one. Like even if it considered a few people, 5, 10 people, 20 people, it was like good enough for me. And I also always like to do some additional coding after hours, hoping that one day I would do some custom project, whatever that is. So I didn't really care that much about, let's say, leveling up for many years in a specific big corporation, because for me it's never been an end goal to finish like this way.
Yeah. I mean, I had I would say maybe not a dream, but actually my personal goal, let's put it this way, for like 2 years to work for Microsoft. I was actually really thinking about this, started even to prepare myself for the potential interview, etc. But at some point it just disappeared. I mean, this will of becoming the software engineer for like big company, because at the end of the day, I wouldn't necessarily say that the size of the company or the prestige of the company is something that determines whether you're happy in the job or not. I mean, at the end of the day, it's always the project. It's and the, I would say, challenges that it puts you and that you need to overcome in order to succeed. So I would say that yes, now I don't consider myself as like I would ever try to to go for the
No,
interview.
I wish I want to retire soon. Just kidding. No.
Yeah, we'll just become like the once we will become a serious deal on the YouTube. So probably within next 25 years.
Yeah. When we reach 100,000 subscribers in 10 years.
Yeah, that would be good.
But I would still do some coding after hours. I couldn't just do nothing. I'll have to do something after hours, probably relating to coding or some product development anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Right, your question, I guess.
All right. So since we start talking about the work in general, maybe let's say skip studies for now. Let's get back to the actual work. So I've seen this many times, that let's say there's this classical hierarchy in a typical, let's say, whether this is a small company or corporation, you have this, either it's called level 1 to 3, or maybe with some different letters on top of this, or maybe this is just junior, mid, regular, senior or senior, senior, principal developer, all this stuff. And at the very beginning, let's say for at least few years or even longer, it's like natural. You are, let's say, an intern, then you are becoming junior developer, regular developer, and so on and so on. But after, let's say, depending on the company, in some companies, you might become a senior developer in 3 years, right? And then you're called a senior developer. It happens. But let's say after 5 years or more, you reach this, for example, senior developer or maybe some kind of principal developer, let's say, position. And what happens next? Sometimes there is this pressure that if you want to move forward with your career, you have to become a manager. And now they will... So let's say you are great at coding, and now since you are great at coding, and if you want to, let's say, earn more money, have more impact on the company, they will realize that you're probably a good manager, and you can now manage teams and people, and you will do less coding or no coding at all. And I've seen this many times. Like, why someone cannot just remain a great developer and just get more money or whatever it is, and just keep on coding while this is what this person loves doing and it's the best at doing. And why sometimes there will be this pressure that this person should be put into this management position. And quite often it becomes like a bad manager because this is a strongly technical person and this person has no experience in managing people. So it's really weird to me.
Yeah, and I fully agree with the fact that making a great programmer, software engineer, a manager is probably, it might be good, let's say, approach, but in most cases it probably will be a bad decision. And of course there are few things that you need to take into the consideration when you're promoting someone. So of course the most obvious question is whether the specific person has all the skills needed for fulfilling all the expectations on the certain position. And of course, you cannot just look at the only technical skills, because you are now the senior developer and you have great knowledge about the architecture, distributed systems, database engines, etc. Now you can just become the manager or technical manager, or however you will call this position, because there's also one very crucial thing, which is the soft skills, right? And all about of course managing people, but also interactions and handling different types of the situations within the team, like conflicts, etc. This is something that you also need to take into the consideration. And I wouldn't say that every developer is capable of doing so. Simple as that. We have different dynamics, different personalities, and not everyone will feel good about such thing. And it's also asking a question also, whether you really would like to give up the coding. Are you ready for it? Because in many cases, there's quite a lot of developers who are already burned, or maybe they don't feel this. They don't enjoy coding that much like they used to. So for them, it might be a good opportunity to still be in more technical area and use their knowledge on more, let's say, strategic level for the corporation. This is something useful. but maybe the coding itself could be delegated to someone, let's say, slightly less experienced. But I wouldn't say that it's like 100% people who would consider this. I mean, I don't see now any chances of giving up the programming completely. And I was always afraid of this, that one day I will just wake up and I will say, fuck this. I don't want to code anymore. I'll tell you one thing. Now I would say, slightly similar situation that you described. And so I'm working as a, let's say, technical leader. I don't want to go into, let's say, considerations, what is the actual position, etc. And I see that within the company I'm working, it's really, I mean, sometimes it's on the edge of like two scenarios. So sometimes I see that these technical leaders are now like discussing different things on the strategic level, but since there's quite a lot of things to discuss, and of course, if you have like 15 people discussing about something very complex, you know that these meetings are getting more and more detailed, and you need more and more meetings to just finish certain topics. And the danger about this is that at some point you are ending up with 7 meetings a day. You also you also need to eat, and at some point you just had 30 minutes to code because you were discussing on the strategic level, you were discussing something more technical. So I think that this is something that it's not always bad. It depends on the situation and where your organization actually is. But I think that this is extremely important for the managers to just monitor this and see whether you're, accidentally not losing 20 great developers, because the only thing that they do is they are sitting in the Zoom meeting and discussing the architecture. And to me, it's completely no-go.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It's something, I don't know. I mean, it's something that to me it's counterintuitive, and it's not always. I mean, it could work, but I don't think that everyone would like to do. I think it's not something that is for everyone.
I think let's say the good kind of middle ground. So let's say you are a great engineer, but you would like maybe not become a manager, but work more with the people. So you could think of becoming, let's say, even the independent consultant, right? Where you would still meet with, let's say, some product owners or analytics, all these persons, do some strategic decisions, talk about some strategic decisions with them, talk about some analysis design of the system, but then you would just sit back with the rest of the technical team and you could do some coding with them and all these things. So this could be a middle ground, but I guess, this would probably require becoming an independent consultant, because since in the companies, I would say it's not really a popular position to be like this freelancer jumping between different projects and teams.
Yes. I mean, it pretty much depends, of course, on the stuff that you're doing. But yeah, maybe this could be also a good sort of thing. I think that this is pretty much the danger about this for the company is that a lot of maybe organizations are afraid that if you're jumping, you're not within the context, you won't be that efficient. It's better to just stay within one project and be responsible for like, years. And this will give you the company the most benefits. But is it really the case? I mean, actually, I wanted to like flip the question that you started at the very beginning, because you said that we have this like junior, mid, or like regular developer. You have then the senior, and this is the typical, let's say, this career path. So, and you said something like in some companies you can be a senior developer within 3 years. So my question to you is, what set of skills, or who would you consider as a junior, as a mid, and as a senior, or as a senior developer? And is it only like time related in terms of years of experience that you have, or is it some other factor that you would say? Because it's very, very popular, like especially let's say on the LinkedIn or some other platforms, that we're looking for the senior. And maybe, and I remember that at some point I was not entirely sure whether I'm still mid or maybe I'm a senior, or should I really apply for the senior position now, because maybe I had like 4 years of experience. Am I now could be considered as a senior because the requirement says at least 5 years?
Okay, so I remember reading some topic. I think it was on Reddit or some other platform not that long ago. There was like a similar question that you just asked, and the answer is actually quite simple. So that you can think of junior developer as someone who, let's say, knows the fundamentals of, let's say, the software development, but this person needs someone to take a look at this person code, what this person is doing. So this person needs some guidance, okay? This person can do some basic tasks, but still needs to be somehow supervised by someone, right? Some additional developer which has more experience. The regular developer is a person that can, let's say, take care on his own or on her own of the specific task. This person doesn't really need some additional, let's say, more experienced developer to take a look what this person is doing. This person can handle all the stuff on her own. While the senior developer is a person that can not only handle all the stuff on his own, but can also come up with some additional ideas, maybe that could improve the overall code quality, architecture, or these things, or could be also mentor for the other developers, junior or regular developers. So it's like a regular developer which also has this, let's say, bigger side of the overall product / project solution, or even the whole company or part of the company, and can, come up with some ideas to whether this is about the actual software architecture or how the company is functioning, how it could maybe improve some processes. That's the senior developer who just goes, the person that goes beyond just writing the code, but also can share some smart ideas. That's I would say something like this. So the junior, someone who needs additional handling. The regular who can take on his own, and the senior who can take on his own plus mentor other developers and gather some smart ideas.
Okay, and now the question. So is it because your definition means that if I'm capable of, let's say, mentoring other people, I'm completely capable of doing given tasks without any asking for any sort of help, then I could be a senior after a year of my career?
I think it depends on the company. I mean, if you are like a genius, this could be possible. There are like kids having the PhDs, right? Or there are kids like Mozart or other smart kids in the history. So this could definitely be maybe a senior if you're a genius. But in most cases, you need years of practice before you will get really fluent with coding. Just like, let's say, you learn a language and you start talking with this language or writing or reading, you need years of experience to be fluent with this. So I think,
And the reason I was asking this, and I will do a bridge to something that I was saying like a couple minutes ago, because I think it works in two ways. So first, if you are smart enough and you're doing a lot of practice and practical, and you're really trying to apply all the stuff that you learned theoretically, and you try to put this into your code, then you might really quickly start getting the things right. And I think that it is possible to become a senior after like 3-4 years. And if you're really doing, and I really even remember, let's say when I was starting working as a software engineer, I was working 8 hours a day, but then additional 4 after it.
And the weekends.
Yeah, and the weekends. And I was just like like in this flow of coding, it was just natural for me to just spend 12 hours in front of my PC, and I was just, whoa, I wasn't even aware of the fact that I need to eat, right? It was just something very natural. Of course, with each of the new year, I mean, it's becoming more and more hard to just try to be in this flow as for such a long time, but it's still, I think that if you would just consider like time factor, so does it mean that I was like does this 4 hours a day additional, does it count as additional experience? Because this means that maybe, yeah, of course someone may say, but yeah, this needs to be commercial experience. But in many cases, actually, I would say that the stuff that even we've done with the DevMentors were more challenging than the stuff I was doing in the regular jobs. So.
Yeah, what was it like? You need 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. So yeah, you were just speeding up with additional hours after regular work or during weekends.
Yeah, exactly. But what I want to say, and close this, I mean, this digression. This works in a also, I mean, slightly different manner when you are, let's say, sitting in the one project for like 10 years. Then it might turn out that once the project is finished, it's, I mean, you have the 10 years of experience, but not in terms of software engineering in general, but in this specific project, maybe, and assuming that you were not doing anything besides that, you were not trying to read books, try to follow new concepts, frameworks, etc., but you were just staying in this bubble of the project, that it may turn out that after 10 years, you are still junior developer, because once you will join new project, you won't be capable of, let's say, create a like minimal API and try to like maybe CQRS or something, because you were doing, let's say, old legacy system.
Yeah, if you are doing maintenance most of the time, then you are still, let's say, like kind of a junior developer that didn't learn anything new. You were just maintaining the same piece of code over the time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I understand the people that, let's say, follow this path. Some developers don't want to spend more time on learning. They just want to have a nice job, good salary, spend more time with family, and they maybe don't care about, learning all the new stuff all the time.
Yes, and
that's fine.
That's that's actually very, very good point, which needs to be, I think, said that I wouldn't consider, I don't know why, but a lot of people consider software engineering like a mission. Like, it's my life mission to become and make the world better. I mean, the long story short is that for some people, it's just a job. Like you're selling a newspaper, or like you're a postman, or you're driving a car.
Yeah, like a carpenter. You just use computer
Yes.
to write code. But what's the difference between someone writing the code or someone working at the factory producing some auto parts or
exactly,
whatever, right?
And it's not, I would say, a shame to not be passionate about the programming, but still doing the programming. You don't need to be passionate. I mean, of course, you probably won't be as good as someone who's like spending like hours reading the books, articles, discussing, creating prototypes, etc. Okay, but does it make you a better person? Better person in terms of the fact that you're reading those books? No, I mean, it makes you a better developer, but I mean, it's not a shame to me, and you should not glorify programming like as a Uber job because you're passionate about it.
Yeah, but the issue also comes from the HR, because sometimes when you look for a job, they will ask you, all right, do you have your open source project? Do you have a blog? Do you do this and that? I mean, I don't know about the other, let's say, other jobs or other professions, but as far as I remember, but maybe I'm wrong, if you are a physician, I'm not sure if you have some kind of GitHub where you share your, let's say, your public treatments with other physicians, or I don't know, maybe there is something like this, but I honestly doubt. I'm not sure if this software engineering is something went wrong here, and it starts with the recruitment actually.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually good. I remember that when I was like less experienced, that was something that I really paid attention. I mean, back then I was having a blog, and yes, I wanted to just highlight all my additional activities to just, I mean, I see the point why this might be useful for the recruiters, because, you know, I mean, let's be honest, recruitment is just a game between two sides. So the company may have like project that sucks and they try to just
tell you it's awesome.
Tell you it's like it's great. I mean, so let's start maybe with first exercise to just see how good developer you are. If you just could create this mentioned heap sort in like 10 minutes with one hand, and that would prove that you are good enough. And once you are just coming into the project, it's just yet another CRUD written in web forms, right? I mean, it's like what the fuck is that? And of course, on the other hand, there are developers who maybe are like average or below average, but they try to just say that they are great. They are like punctual and they are very passionate about the programming. And of course, the easiest way to challenge it is to show you some additional activities, because if you are, let's say, doing blog and every single Monday you're putting the article on it, then to me this is more like a proof that you, let's say, are, you know, well organized and you actually deliver something every single Monday. You have it, or not necessarily like every single, but if you're doing this on your regular basis and once a while it appears, it's not like once a year you just put this on the blog, then to me that would be from the HR perspective, that would be a like clear sign that okay, this guy actually is serious about this, right? But it's not like if you're not having a blog, you're now incapable of doing software engineering and you're worse.
If you don't have a GitHub, who cares? I have friends who work at Facebook or other really good companies at very high positions. They don't give a crap about having a GitHub account because no one cares about this. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it might be useful. Let's put it this way. It might be useful.
Yeah, for me, it helped me to find some, let's say, interesting jobs, because I had some article on a blog about some, let's say, Facebook API integration, or I would have some GitHub projects, and sometimes I had a few very nice contracts because I had this additional activity after hours.
And actually, I think that because of the blog activities, we kind of met.
Yeah, could be.
So yes. So I think that if none of us would ever just exist in the social media, like have no blog, there will be very, I would say, limited chance that we would be sitting here together. Yeah. So that's good. That's good that we actually discussed this. I guess that's your question because I flipped the site with the with this mid, junior and the senior.
Okay, so another question. So let's talk a bit more about the job, but now let's talk about the, let's say, being consultant or being more like a trainer or whatever you call this, a person who can conduct the workshops. So let's say, what was the reason that you decided that you want to do workshops for someone, or you want to teach someone, whether this is programming or whether this is some advanced topics like microservices or whatever it is? What was the reason, or when it started?
I guess that it was 2018 or 19, because the first, I mean, I had 2 workshops before we actually started doing so. First, maybe why, and when will come later. So honestly, I even way before I was start doing the programming, I really enjoyed helping people or teaching people. If I was good at, let's say, math, I was pretty good at math. In primary school or like middle school, I was pretty good at explaining other people why something should be done other than that. And the reason for that was that I always tried and I always was doing or thinking about the teaching, like I really need to give you a reason why you should apply this and in what way you should do this to achieve the certain result. So to me, all those like mentioned artificial examples was always stupid way of teaching. I really didn't get this. Our very strict formula, especially on the physics. Maybe you had this impression that, let's say, on the lecture, you had this tutor who was saying that, now I will teach you about like integrals or some other stuff, and it gives you like terrifically long definition, which gives you absolutely no clue what you're actually now listening. And all of a sudden, when the classes actually appear, and you have, let's say, different type of tutor who's now saying, okay, so you were taught about, let's say, integrals, and now this is how to do this and why you are actually doing so. And same, let's say, for the programming. And I remember that I had the lecture about like the object-oriented programming. Maybe object-oriented programming was not very well explained, I would say, on the classes, but I had this, like topics regarding concurrence and what is, let's say, the mutex or the critical sections or something. And on the lecture, I completely got lost after 3 minutes. I was not capable of understanding why this actually needs to be used. While on the classes, the tutor was just open the laptop, start coding, and see, okay, now can you see the reason why this will not work? Now we are compiling this. I can clearly see that the program is messed up. I now have the feeling that something needs to be put, and then it's the whole explanation why we need to have it. So very practical. I was never the fan of doing the teaching in a way that you're giving like made up examples and once you will leave the place, no one actually got anything from it. So I was teaching like the math from, actually, when I left my parents and I started living on my own. My very, let's say, first unofficial job was teaching people math for the high school, and that was my way of making money. No taxes, by the way, but that was not very. It's like comparing money-wise, that was not the best job I had. Let's put it this way. Then when it comes to programming, and I, let's say, got confident in certain areas, because of course I'm not consider myself as an expert in terms of, let's say, algorithms, etc., but I do feel pretty comfortable in the, let's say, software architecture. Then it just became natural that maybe the same thing should be applied also to the programming. And I've done 2 workshops with my I'd say second company I was working for, and that was like the basics of the like C# in general. So I was spending, I'm not quite sure how many, but I guess that was like 80 or 90 hours. So that was like 4 months of classes every second weekend. And to me, that was this very satisfying to see that the people who were just like still, let's say, some of them just graduated the university, some of them were now actively working, but not as a software engineers. There were just people who wanted to become software engineers. That was very satisfying to see that at first classes they didn't even know what the Visual Studio is, and after like this all 90 hours, they were capable of doing like web application with pretty nicely structured code, and that was very satisfying. And I remember that it's I would say a year later you just wrote that there is maybe let's try to create a workshops about the microservices and see whether this will click, and it clicked, and that's, I guess, how it started. Yeah, for you that was, I think that you started like 2 years before, I guess.
Yeah, at first on YouTube with my friends, where I recorded with him this C# course over, I don't know, 20 hours, I think it's 24 lessons, but it's in Polish. I mean, there are still blog posts in English on my blog, but the recording is in Polish. It was one of the very first versions of .NET Core. So, I mean, most of the content is still pretty much up to date. The framework changed a bit, but the general idea behind the fundamentals is still there. And yeah, I think I started with the YouTube, and then I just started doing some workshops. A lot of open workshops, like something like you. So C# fundamentals, like weekend workshops, or this DevMentors initiative we have in Poland. Mostly again about C#, .NET Core, all this stuff. And then I started doing some commercial workshops after some time, but it took me, I don't know, 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I must say that because your question was related more to why I started. But there is also, I think, a fair question, why do I continue to do this? And there's another factor which is really important, I think, and not very obvious in terms of doing the workshops. So, typically, I mean, if you're not doing your workshops, you might think that the whole process looks as follows. So I have a code, I'm going to the workshops, I'm teaching you about certain stuff, then you're doing exercises, and it's like copy-paste when the next client comes. And it's not necessarily true, because I faced the situation many times in which I'm teaching someone about certain stuff, and instead of just doing exactly the same approach, someone is just raises the hand and says, okay, but can we do this like using this approach? And why you're in this case doing the approach X instead of Z? And this is the situation that you've never thought about. It's something that you've never taken into consideration, because you probably have some sort of maybe not like
happy path,
but something that, because you are the author of the code, you probably chose, at least in your opinion, the best possible approach. And now all of a sudden someone from the outside confirms this with his knowledge, and it might appear that after a result, both of you will actually learn something. Because in general, of course, the people who come to workshops, they are the beneficiaries of these workshops. But a lot of time, there was very great discussions about certain solution, and I was also the beneficient of this. And I was like doing the refactoring, or I was trying to explain certain different things in slightly different manner, and it's something that is like beautiful.
Yeah, and it's running the workshops. Also increases your soft skills. So if you don't know if you are capable of working with people, just either go to the local meetup, go to the conference, or try to run the workshops where you have to not really manage, but somehow, let's say, supervise a group of 10 or 15 or 20 people. And you will see if you have any fear of publicly speaking or asking their questions or doing these kind of things.
Yes.
This also helps with soft skills. And maybe you will feel, if you want to continue this way, and if you will feel that, okay, maybe I want to do some kind of management path because all of a sudden I enjoyed working with a group of people and I want to continue this path. Or maybe you will feel that after one meetup or one workshops, it just fears you and scares the hell out of you, and you don't want to do this anymore.
Yes, but I would say that once again, you should not fall into this thought process that only if you will become either if you will run a workshop or you will become a public speaker, then you could be considered as a successful software engineer. I would not say it's for everyone. It's worth trying. It's worth trying to just see whether this fits you or not. But I would not consider, if you're not feeling comfortable, it will just, it will look weird, awkward, even for the listeners, because you will see, they will clearly see that something is wrong.
Yeah, that you are like doing things, like reading from the script,
yeah,
step by step, and this won't feel natural.
Okay, I have a question, because we talked about all those stuff related to the work and all the stuff related to the workshops. And I think that now this whole bridge will turn to my probably final question. So how would you describe DevMentors? I mean, and what was the whole root of DevMentors? How this whole initiative became, and how would you sum it up after we're running for 3 years now, 3 or 4 even? I think that we started for 4 years. What this gives you, and maybe how this changed your life, if changed in any sort of sense.
It's an interesting question.
I mean, you could expect this in the DevMentors podcast that this may appear.
Okay, so for me, it's like doing what I was doing back then, but solo. So let's say when I did this first YouTube recording, this course, or when I did this first open workshops, or this kind of things. So back then I did this on my own, and then I was like, let's gather, let's find some people who have the similar way of thinking. So let's say there's 2 of us or 3 of us or whatever. Let's say there's a few people that have the same way of thinking, and these people would also like to share their knowledge. Because when you do things on your own for a long time, sometimes you may be like, I don't know if it makes sense. I don't know if I want to continue with this. I don't see, let's say, too many subscribers on my YouTube. I'm afraid to speak in English. I don't know how to, let's say, sign up to the conference. And you might just give up after some time, right? After this, let's say, enthusiasm, after first few months, starts falling down, falling apart. You might feel like, okay, I tried, but didn't work out. But when there is, let's say, additional person and you're doing things together, you just have this additional, I would say, drive. There's this additional factor that kind of drives you, that you are not on your own in this, and you can just work together.
Yeah,
so I think that's what kind of drives me. That this is something that I wanted to do on my own, and I did on my own. But after some time, I'm not sure if I were still doing this if we didn't let's say merge or group together in this.
I must say that I'm very surprised with this answer in a positive sense. And actually, this is something that I never actually consider as a driver. And actually, I think that I agree. If I would just do things on my own, I'm not gonna lie. I think that most of the stuff that we published, I mean, let's say on my side, would not be ever being posted anywhere. Because let's maybe put some timeline historically, what happened before. So we used to have blogs. I mean, you still have. Mine died this year because
mine is alive, but I haven't been publishing there for a long time now.
So we were doing blogs. Each of us had a blog because of the initiative that we had in Poland. So I think that was loosely translated as Get Noticed. The idea was that there was just like this whole competition in which you were obligated to have a blog, create the post like twice a week, I guess, describe the project that you are maintaining or creating from scratch. And then there was like voting from the outside and from different sponsors, companies, etc. They were just voting about certain stuff. And at the end of this, you had some prize for the winner, and that was the initiative. But of course, there was like hidden prize of it for everyone. So you just started doing, right? You just started doing blog, and you just maybe over this time, because this lasts for 3 months, I guess. You just could challenge whether this is something for you or not. And that was, as a result of this competition, you won, right?
Yeah,
you won. And that was I guess first time that we met on this gala. Like you won. I got some special prize with this small drone that I destroyed on my first attempt to fly. Yeah, and you won Xbox or something, yeah?
I mean, the Xbox was an additional prize from Microsoft for some additional stuff, and I won this great chair, this Herman Miller Iron chair. I still using it. I love this chair.
Oh, the chair was the prize. Okay, I thought
I think the chair or something, but I picked the chair. That's great.
That's a good prize. Okay, that's a good prize. So that was the first time that we kind of met for the first time. And later, what? I remember that sometime I posted on Twitter that I consider doing microservices course on YouTube.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the same, and yeah, this is how it started.
And this
And I remember I asked on this public Slack channel after this competition. There was this Slack channel that was at first internal, then became public. I was looking for a name for some initiative, and then I think there was Marcin. One guy just came up, DevMentors was the name. So it's not. I didn't figure this out. So thank you for picking the right name. And actually remember this name.
I honestly I didn't even remember how this name popped out.
Yeah. And I remember there was this name, and I was like, okay, we have a name, that's great, but after a year, still nothing has been happening. Nothing has happened. But then we just decided to do this microservice stuff together, and then I already had a name in place. So finally, after like a year or two.
And I already had a logo structure because I was considering doing with another friend like something that I would say Oscar Dudic is now doing on his daily, so this weekly architecture. We thought about something called Dev News, and actually Dev News was one-to-one DevMentors logo, so exactly the same. And I just created a logo, and this whole initiative died. And we thought also about the podcasts, so that just we'll have this like news format that you could just listen what was happening, but the initiative died and the logo just remained somewhere on my G drive. And once you said okay, so let's do this, we had this DevMentors name, I actually just said okay, you know what, I might have a logo, and this is, so we reused two things, and this is how this became actually. Yeah, but I would also say that what this means to me, I think that there are two aspects. First is like, yes, one, I can do still what I really like to do, so teaching like another people. So of course the D-Shop was first initiative, and I must say that this is one of the most important part, of course, because I mean I personally have the satisfaction when I see that people are enjoying all those materials and they are simply becoming a better developers, and that's just great. But also I must say the way of knowledge that I also gathered because of you and because of the work that we put into, let's say, workshops, courses, etc., is also something that was like additional booster. Like I experienced this not only in the programming. I like now not very actively, but I'm playing the guitar, and I remember that all those, like, the best progress that I've ever done with on the guitar was when I had someone who was playing with me, because we, like, of course, like even within like DevMentors, we sometimes on different occasions we may try to maybe not compete, but improve overall. Like, you have this something, I give suggestion, you give suggestion to something I do, we are discussing also. It's not like, I mean, I would say that surprisingly we are, or maybe that's because we are working together for such a long time, we have very similar approach to most of the stuff, but there are some sort of scenarios in which we are discussing whether this is good or not. And I must say that it's something that gave me a lot of like boosting like knowledge to myself, and I think that solo I would not be in this place, I guess. So it's also something that is really, really cool for me. Yeah, that was nostalgic. I would say. Yeah, but it's good that I think that this first episode was in the more like loosely structure. And of course we'll do our best to just give you more and more technical, I would say, topics with great experts, because probably this also will improve you as a software engineers. And of course, depending on the level, or let's say in the position in your career where you're currently in, you may gain more or less knowledge. But after all, I think that in each episode we'll do our best to give you something, right, or to just add this small brick into your whole knowledge. Especially that for those less experienced developers, we actually prepared something, right?
Yeah, this solid web API course.
Yeah. Actually, this name cracks me up. That was actually Peter's idea, and we were like, okay, so how to call this course? And to me, that was like, I don't know, like web API fundamentals, but it's not all. So maybe let's start about what is this actually. And
so you can check our announcement on YouTube, our latest video.
Yeah.
This solid web API announcement, but it's going to be the course about both things. One being web API from the very scratch with the ASP.NET Core, latest version, .NET 6.0.
Yeah.
So all the, let's say, framework goodies and web API, design patterns, principles, REST API, research for maturity model, all this stuff, how to implement the web API from the very scratch using ASP.NET Core framework.
Mm-hmm.
But there is more important, equally or even more important part, which is all about this software engineering principles and object-oriented programming design patterns. So we will start with something simple, and we'll see how as the time goes by,
Mm-hmm.
how this basic, let's say, approach starts evolving, and how we'll see learn about new patterns, new approaches, make our code look better. So like a very, let's say, fast way from, let's say, junior developer thinking or internship developer thinking to more like regular or even senior developer thinking in terms of code preparation, all those patterns and all that stuff.
Yes, and I would say that once again I need to refer to one of your first questions. So something that I should pay more attention to in terms of the university and my whole education. I mean, the whole essence of this course is to teach you concepts first and how they may impact the overall design, and later, in addition to, you will see how framework may just help you with achieving the certain or like materializing certain decisions. Because if you are only like learning about the frameworks, I mean, it's probably will be much faster than doing like theory, concepts, and the code itself. But you might just need to remember that the concepts will remain always, and the frameworks may just come and go. And especially if you have ever experienced JavaScript and its dynamics of the libraries, you might see that. I would say that instead of learning just let's say Angular, you should maybe learn about MV Star, like model view, whatever. Maybe about if you are using like Redux and this whole Flux architecture, etc. It's something that it's worth knowing, because after all, the framework is just the implementation of this concept, right?
Yeah.
And this is why this solid cracks me up, because it's like the essence, like what we want to achieve by this course. So not only the web API, but also make it like solid
principles, but not only, but
of course not only, but but
especially.
this will make your code solid.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess that's pretty much it where it comes to software as we know it podcast
or
episode.
Software as you know IT. That's
yeah, exactly.
That's the whole beauty of this name.
yeah, exactly.
The IT is with capital letter.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll probably see that. I think that maybe at the very end. Let's just maybe explain. I think that maybe you should do this at the very beginning, but this is our podcast. We can do whatever we want. Why this name? I mean, the idea was very simple. Actually, this is something that you said already, that in many cases, I guess, all those patterns and maybe also the experts, you might think that everything that they've ever touched was just state of the art, etc. So we want to, like, of course, with each episode, we want to discuss certain things regarding the IT in general. So sometimes this will be more technical, sometimes less, but also want to just confront and just build the whole interview to just see what are the typical mistakes regarding certain things,
Mhm.
certain topics, to just give you the whole spectrum of what this might look like. It's not like if you are using event sourcing, which by the way will be the topic of the next episode.
Yep.
It's not always like event sourcing is just a great state-of-the-art approach that will make your solution robust or something. You'll also see the challenges or the price that you need to pay in order to just apply it. So that was the whole idea, and this IT actually is a very cool bridge in here. Is anything that we should add?
I think that's it for the first episode. I think that's long enough already.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully you enjoyed this, and we'll not see actually. We will. Yeah, you'll hear us.
You'll hear us. Yeah.
Within next 2 weeks, and we will bring a great expert regarding the event sourcing. We can just tell you already that this episode is going to be awesome. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Software as We Know It, episode number 1.